How's that? Good. All right. Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, March 19th, Scarborough Board and Leadership Council Budget Workshop. So I will turn it over to Kate and Diane. Oh, yes.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Kelleher. I'm here. Ms. Leon,
Here.
Ms. Lindstrom,
Here.
Ms. Peterson,
She's been excused.
Mr. Rockenstein. Here. Ms. Tarpinian,
Here.
Ms. Trupini Huff. Coming in hot.
She's gonna be late.
Yes.
I just realized as well that we didn't adjourn last night, which usually so we're carrying over to today. So if someone can just remind me today, we need to adjourn.
Yes.
I would appreciate it. Thank you. Would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now I'll turn it over to Hannah Kate.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. We're excited to be back with you this morning. Our leadership team is excited to share with you their pieces of the upcoming budget. And as we talked about last night, one of the things that I'm really excited about is because we have been providing ongoing education and more reporting to the board throughout the year during the school board meetings and having these special presentations by our building leaders. I think that will assist us today in really focusing in on the things that pertain to the budget. I know in years past, we've spent a lot of time giving overviews of the school or explaining where we are with programming and initiatives. And one of the huge points of pride for our team, for me, is that, you know, our leaders have done a great job regularly communicating that to you at our board meetings. And so I think that will help us this morning in terms of really focusing in on our priorities. And for our team, you all have copies of the budget book. So last evening was really a high level overview of where we are as a district, how we compare, what we receive for GPA, and what our per pupil expenditure costs look comparatively speaking. I talked and we planted some seeds for some of the things that you all are going to be talking about today. We shared some data around MTSS with the board. And so everything that we did last night was on the non-instructional side of the house. And this morning, we're going to focus on everything pertaining to instruction. So one shift for people who have been in our budget meetings before is we generally don't hear from curriculum and special education at this meeting. In the past, that's been done in the evening presentation. And as Kate and I talked about what made the most sense as we move forward, we really felt like to have a total instructional look in one fell swoop made a lot of good sense. Because I think we'll hear some themes repeated. So with that, I think we will jump right in and get started with Katie. Is there something else, Kate, before we get started?
To comment, I think all of our team has been taking their notes on our little paper sheets, but if you happen to want to be digital, you can go into the agenda and there's note pages to type into as well. But Jenna just said this one time they don't have to have their Chromebooks. So kind of nice.
Right. Super.
Okay. So I'll just jump in really quickly with some fast facts around curriculum and instruction, speaking specifically about our assessment achievement. This is really a reminder from the presentation that I did last June 6th, 2024. So if anyone's watching and wants to dig more deeply into our assessment data, they can go back to that meeting to see many more slides about how students performed in the 2023-2024 school year. But in just looking quickly at our state assessments, which are standardized assessments given in two key areas, the main 3-year assessment covers reading and math, and the MEA science assessment covers science. When we look at the main 3-year assessment, on average, 82% of our students in grades 3 through 8 and 10 who take the assessment scored at or above reading, above grade level expectation in the area of reading, which compares to an average of 65% of students across the state. And in math, 77% of our students scored at or above grade level expectation as compared to 47% of students. In science, I'm sharing the 8th and 11th grade science facts. 72% of Scarborough 8th graders scored at or above grade level expectation compared to 44% on average in the state, and 66% of 11th graders as compared to 36% on average across the state. So to just highlight a few really big successes in the curriculum department this year, we are in year 2 of implementation of our SEL curriculums. MindUp is our K2 curriculum. That was a 1-year implementation with teachers really digging in this year more deeply through their PLTs. And so they are working together in smaller groups to dig deeper into that curriculum in unique ways. So for example, there's a PLT who's looking into how interactive read alouds can, I don't want to say improve, but can like really supplement the MindUp curriculum because there's a lot of use of mentor text. So bringing in instructional practices that help students with their literacy skills and with their comprehension while doing SEL is one example of how they are using their PLTs to dig deeper into MindUp. And with Ruler, that's our 3rd through 8th grade curriculum, and they're in year 2 of implementation. It's a 2-year implementation for that program. The first year was really focused on teacher learning. The second year is where we start to really build out student learning, and their focus has really been on the tools this year. And I think you'll hear more from both Wentworth and the middle school about the success of that, but that's been a really positive addition to our district. One of the things that I think we should take a lot of pride in is we have begun a systematic review of curriculum across the district following a cycle that I built out in my first months here. Last year, we focused on social studies and health and PE. Social studies really continued into this year, particularly at K5, where some standards writing and some revision of the units needed to happen in order to improve the vertical alignment and the clarity for teachers. We just had a meeting yesterday with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teams, and I can say as of yesterday at 3:30, the topics and standards, essential questions and vocabulary are all solidified for the coming school year. And I'm excited for us to spend some time this summer building out units and lesson plans so that when teachers come back in the fall, they'll have a curriculum they can turn to with a lot of clarity. So that's really exciting. We have a lot going on this year in 2 key areas that began review: English language arts and world language. K-12 teams have really dug into the ELA work. K-5 is meeting regularly through the spring. 6-8 has been meeting all school year. They have really worked on digging through the standards to ensure that the things that we're currently teaching are addressing all of the key areas of literacy that we see in assessments. And then in world language, we really talked about our vision of the program as a whole. The world language program here is really robust. And so we really looked at like, what is our vision over the next 5 years, not just pedagogically, but in the ways that we provide pathways for students through language. Another thing I think we should take a lot of pride in is we've really begun to dig deeply into our data discussions. We collect robust data here, and so bringing that to teachers and having conversations about how we can look at data and make decisions about instruction has become a really important part of the practice, and we're solidifying that into something that's predictable and regular and on schedule. So I'm really excited about that. And then there's been a lot of work in professional development. So last summer, we had the Maine Outdoor Learning Initiative grant that you've heard about. Middle school educators dug into that PD opportunity, and it resulted in field experience opportunities. In addition to the integrated studies, it resulted in field experience opportunities with 6th grade studying invasive crab species at Higgins Beach, and 8th grade getting a field experience around geological change at Fort Williams Park. And so we can say like one of the great things is like all sixth graders and all eighth graders got to benefit from those experiences that teachers engaged in PD. And seventh grade is working on theirs as well. And then we made a little bit of a change to how we onboard teachers with curriculum. In the past, they were invited to a whole day, particularly at the elementary level, to be shown what curriculum we use. K-5, they'd spend half the day with ELA and half the day with math. And with the support of the instructional coach team and administration, we changed the day to a what we call the Scarborough Public Schools Welcome Symposium. We invited all professional staff, so K-12, matched them with coaches or mentor teachers. We had a special education teacher join us to ensure the special education staff had somebody to connect with, and really built a day around not just the curriculum, but providing opportunities for them to ask questions and get to know the people that they'll work directly with. And that was a huge success. And then just a lot of work happening around curriculum teams, as well as our in-service professional development. We just had that on Friday, and it was a wonderful opportunity for all K-12 educators to come together and learn during the morning. They had a choice of 20 to 22 sessions they could choose from over each of 3 sessions. And so they were able to make choices that were just right for them in order to engage in their learning. And that was really successful. And then looking ahead, I feel like we're really in a place where we want to stay the course and continue to see the work become predictable and regular and systematic. So our goals and priorities continue to be on curriculum review. Next year, we'll begin to engage math and visual performing arts in their reviews as we continue specifically ELA. I think world language and social studies are in a place where we'll revisit in a couple of years. They seem to be pretty settled. And then we are going to continue to look to using data to lead student-centered discussions. And that's a regular practice that we're working to build across the district in support of multi-tiered systems of support. So really ensuring that we take a look at all students to provide opportunities for all of them in instruction. We'll continue to be strategic about our professional development and aligning that to the practices we want to implement as we review curriculum. And we'll continue to support summer programming. So in addition to the Summer Reading Academy and Middle School Connections Academy, just supporting the high school department with high school credit recovery options as well. That's where we stand with curriculum.
I forgot which school it was. You really shouldn't put me in charge. Right, so I think we're moving into the primary school section, K2 section, but we also have a little info about pre-K.
And I can jump in there. So again, as you recently heard at our pre-K workshop, we have successfully had a pre-K pilot this year with the Shooting Stars program. It has been a grant funded opportunity through the DOE, and that grant will continue for the coming year. We don't have a total price tag of what that grant that we will be receiving is yet. Kate and I have a meeting coming up with the DOE on that because last year, in the first year, there was some money provided in the grant for some startup costs. So we'll be backing those out. So we don't have an exact number on that yet, but it should sustain the program so that there are not any local funds that will be expended next year. Per the state guidelines, we have had 16 students in our pilot classroom receiving programming 5 hours a day, 5 days a week with 2 staff, again, all according to regulations. The curriculum that's being used at Shooting Stars is aligned to the Maine Early Learning and Development Standards. Again, when you sign on for public pre-K, you need to make sure that you're hitting all of the requirements in Chapter 124. And we've been really careful and thoughtful about making sure that we're doing that. Students were selected in a semi-random lottery. I say semi-random because we really wanted to make sure that we had, first of all, a reflection of the demographics that we have in our schools K to 12, but then also that there was representation from the different segments of our community, right? So we wanted to be careful about making sure that the majority of the students weren't from one of our neighborhood school locations. Our pre-K programs, as I said, require one adult for every 8 students. And those are strict limits that the state adheres to. And again, just like everything else you hear us talk about, it seems like everything we do here in Scarborough is an all-in initiative that, takes many hands. And I think this is another example of that. Our nutrition department delivers lunches to Shooting Stars every day, just like they do with our K2 schools, and provide snacks for that program. And we do not provide transportation. That is not a requirement for public pre-K. And again, because we are starting out small and at one location, and as you've heard us talk about our transportation department, we are certainly not in a position right now where we can add any additional responsibilities in that particular department. But we are excited. I think that we could not have anticipated how successful this particular venture has been for us. Very few bumps. And we just have an amazing partner in Ruth Hughes at Shooting Stars. And so we're excited for that to continue and to be able to continue to receive grant funding. I know that all of you know this, but for the benefit of others who might be watching the budget workshop, just a reminder that there is not currently any additional state funding to expand pre-K at this time. Certainly, I think we are really deliberate about keeping our eyes on any opportunities for funding for pre-K and for anything else, quite frankly. But that is not something that is available at this time. So we'll continue to watch and monitor what that looks like. I think the long-range plan for pre-K here in Scarborough is dependent upon space availability. And there are a lot of big decisions I know that the larger community will be making in the coming year that will help us to get more information about what that means for choices that we might be able to make for pre-K in the future.
Right, that turns us over to primary
go to
schools.
kindergarten.
And then they go to kindergarten. So we used to sit here proudly and say, all learning starts here at K2, but
Oh,
it doesn't
it's
now. It
development.
starts at Shooting Stars.
Right.
Most people, it still starts in kindergarten. So I feel like all year long, all we've done is talk about K2 schools and space and population and things with the building committee. So I apologize for the repetition and the what feels like the same kinds of things. But so just some fast facts about K2. We have a multitude of languages spoken at home. When I looked this up, I was shocked to see all the ones that I wasn't even sure where they were originating from. So there's some North African and East African languages that we've not had in the past. Pardon? Oh, you just went too fast.
Ignore me.
Yeah, okay. And it's just been such an amazing opportunity to welcome these families into our community. And as Diane has already said, this backpack program to bringing people food, to helping them with their household goods, through May Needs, our ML program, and not to steal any of Chris's thunder, is amazing. It's supporting the whole family, not just the student. So I think we can be really proud of the efforts that all of the staff are putting in to welcome kids into school. I've said this once, I'll say it a million times more, I can't imagine, it's hard enough to take your 5-year-old to school when you are born in this town, speak English as a native language, can read all about it, can go visit it, can hear from your neighbors what it's like. I can't imagine putting a 5-year-old on a random school bus with strangers to take them to a place you may not know very well and can't call and ask anybody about, and trust that we will get them back to you safely and hopefully feeling a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more capable every day and successful every day. And I think that is something we do very well. And I couldn't be more proud of the staff at all 3 schools for putting out all that effort on with our multi-language families. We do have 85% of our students performing on or above grade level in reading as the spring of 2024 iReady administration. As Katie said about that's well over the state average, and we should be very proud of that. 76% of our students performed on or above grade level in math in the spring of 2024. Again, that's really impressive and shows the hard work of staff and families. 49% of our, or 18 of the 37 primary homerooms are in portables. There are 4 portables at Pleasant Hill, 10 at Eight Corners, and 4 at Blue Point. It's something we've talked about a million times. I don't need to tell you anything more about that. 4% of our students have 504 plans currently, and 20% are on IEPs. And nearly 24% of our students receive social work services. Social work services, we've been very fortunate for the last 18 to 20 years to have full-time social workers at the 3 K2 schools. They really wear a variety of hats between being special education social workers and meeting kids' needs on IEPs, as well as regular ed social workers and running friendship groups and worry groups and helping kids transition into school and feel welcome and safe. So there's a lot of kids who are anxious these days because of a lot of things that are going on, and the social workers are really there to help them feel secure and safe, and they do an amazing job at that. So I'm going to be a little bit repetitive again. We've been implementing the Mind Up curriculum for 2 years now. Last year was our sort of dip our toe in the water year with staff and students. This year it's been rolled out pretty completely. We also have been able to pilot the pre-K version of Mind Up because kindergarten teachers felt like some of the pre-K lessons were more where kids were and they would meet their needs better. So we've been, experimenting with different levels to try to meet kids where they are and help them become self-regulating little learners. So we're really excited about that. And the early intervention teachers added at each school, again, I feel like a broken record. These positions have been school changing, life changing. I know it probably it's not a well-explained title, but our early intervention teachers are similar to maybe a bridge or a teacher at the other schools, where kids who come to school without school readiness skills, who come to school with deficits in knowing how to wait or how to go to the bathroom by themselves or how to be in a room with 18 other kids and 3 other adults or 1 other adult, how to be on a playground with 120 kids, all of those things that kids don't all come to school with and are having bigger reactions to. These teachers are there to support the kindergarten classrooms. They're there to help kids learn these skills in small groups. They're eventually, right now at Eight Corners, we're finally getting kids in for academic reasons. Prior to this, it was strictly safety and social, emotional learning reasons. And they've just been phenomenal at keeping data on how many kids, like the one at my school may not have seen as many students as maybe the Blue Point or Pleasant Hill one has, but that's because she spent an inordinate amount of time with 2 or 3 children who have needed a lot of support for long periods of time during the day because they come without any sort of identification or support plan through CDS. So it's just the way we get them into school. And we want them to stay here. We want them to be safe, and we want them to be the best student they can be. Turn the rest over to Ms. Humphrey.
So that's a great segue, actually, talking about the high needs that we see with students coming into the K-2 schools. And, you know, as Anne was saying, those early intervention positions have really been instrumental. One of the things that we've established this year and are looking forward to continuing to implement are the data teams that Katie was alluding to earlier. You know, of course, over the years, we've always been looking at our data and using it to target instruction for students. But this year, we have stepped that up a notch to create wider teams that are made up of not just administrators and teachers, but those early interventionists, the instructional coach team, members of the curriculum department, to come together and really look at, along with our student support professionals, you know, looking at that whole school data from a higher view, looking at the reading and the math, looking deeply into grade level data and specific individual student data, so we can really target instruction together. And that team approach, I think, is really key in having us an ability to put our brains together about what are the trends that we're seeing with students over time, and what are the instructional areas where we're seeing gaps for students that we can either bolster our curriculum or bolster our instructional strategies. And so those things have been really a great addition to our practice to widen the way that we look at data together as a team. So we're looking forward to continuing with that as we move forward. The second thing that we're super proud of, as Diane was mentioning, is our implementation of our first pre-K classroom here in Scarborough. So we were able to provide for 16 students that early experience in school. So when they come to us in kindergarten, they have some of that experience under their belt. In some cases, some of those children hadn't had a preschool experience or even a daycare experience before. So that's really something that we're proud of having done this school year. And moving into goals and priorities for moving forward, as we've talked about so many times, post-COVID, we're just seeing, we continue to see students who come to us for a variety of reasons with a variety of needs that are quite heightened. As Anne was talking about earlier, sometimes their experience is pretty limited coming into school, and the school environment in and of itself is bigger and wider and just different for our youngest learners. And so we do see students who come to us with academic needs that are higher, with behavioral or school readiness needs like self-regulation, for example, being able to really integrate into a classroom. And so sometimes those are social emotional needs. And we've really been focused on thinking about how we can broaden what we offer to students in terms of proactive guidance support. So that may look like increasing the number of student small group lunches that we can offer, where students come together with small peer groups to really talk about some of the things that are most challenging for them, whether it's integrating with peer relationships and navigating friendship issues, or maybe it's growing in confidence to be a full participatory member of a classroom. So lots of different things that are addressed in those important small lunch groups. And one of the things too that we look to provide at increasing levels is support around small group testing. When we're assessing students, some are able to take those assessments within a regular classroom, and some really benefit from a smaller setting with fewer distractions and fewer students. So of course that requires an all hands on deck approach with our staff. So those are things we want to continue to make sure we're providing for students going forward. Back to the data teams, I talked a little bit about that a moment ago, but really thinking about that wider team that we use to review data is one portion of that. But the second piece of that is really a structured protocol that we've established and implemented here. We've actually used it in leadership team to look at data, but we've also used it in our 3 K-2 schools to look at data in a really specific protocol so that staff really get used to how we look at data together, and that allows them to know what to expect when they come into those meetings and know how to be prepared to engage in those meetings. So we're looking forward to continuing to not only utilize that protocol, but continue to tweak it to meet our needs and our students' needs as we look at the kinds of supports that students may need. Thirdly, enhancing safety and security in our school buildings is always forefront on our minds, and through the school board advisory committee's work over the last several years, you've heard us talk about this a lot. Safety and security in terms of our hope and want to enclose vestibules at all of our lobby areas has been on our minds for sure. And in addition to that, looking at the concern that we have that 49% of our K-2 schools are in portable temporary classrooms. They're intentioned to be temporary use classrooms. And some of those are not connected to the buildings. And so that's a great concern as students have to leave an enclosed, the safety of a building, to go outdoors to access another part of their day. So that's a concern for us. Additionally, in terms of safety and security, the 3 K-2 schools could really benefit from additional cameras in different locations at the different schools, obviously, but interior cameras as well as exterior cameras. So that's something that we want to be looking at going forward.
And those are in the CIP part of the budget.
Mhm.
So just
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
a follow-up, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And really, lastly, I would say that as we look to welcome all families, whether they're new Mainers or families who are new to town, we really want to work to create those welcoming, inclusive, safe school environments where everyone feels not only welcome and included, but also supported. And that means families too. So we are continuing with our partnerships with Maine Needs as well as Project Grace to also work with our nutrition department through the backpack program, making sure that the people who we are serving in school have their needs met. And so when they come to us, they are more ready to learn and access the programming that we're providing to them. So
And one follow-up that I would just add is like my observation that I think it can be really challenging when you have, 3 sites that are trying to provide the same type of programming. And I think that our leaders have worked together really well to make that happen and to be really consistent across schools. I think that the addition of the leadership stipended positions that were added into the budget in the past couple of years have helped you to kind of develop a different type of governance structure where everyone's voices are really being heard. And that with, the change to how you're looking at data more systematically and, including a diverse group of people at the table to think about what student needs are. All of these loop back to what we were talking about last evening, which is the types of intervention and support positions that we've been able to make happen in the district. And so it's really exciting to watch those prior investments grow, right? And really start to make an impact on what's happening for our kids. when I see the data that, the academic data that you shared, right? And then I think back to the number of students that we're serving through intervention. We're not missing kids, right? When we say that 76% of our kids are at grade level, and then we have these different types of support positions. We have academic support and student support, and we have guidance, right? And MLL services and special education. We're really trying to kind of come from all different fronts to make sure that student needs are being met. And, you know, it's really great to watch that grow and develop. They're doing an excellent job with that.
Yeah, and one of the pieces that I would just add that I didn't mention earlier is, you know, our data review process is really helping us to home in on the students who are beneath the 40th percentile for ELA or for math specifically. And differentiation of instruction happens in all of our classrooms. So teachers are providing tier 1 instruction, which is the instruction that all learners get, but they're also providing some tier 2 differentiated instruction for students who may need a little bit more. In addition to that, you know, at Blue Point, we have 56 students who've received really targeted instruction to meet their specific academic needs. And that's kind of a combination between what they're getting in class, as well as what they may be provided through student support as pull out and or push in instruction. And at Eight Corners, that equivalent number of kids who've received support is 61 students. And at Pleasant Hill, it's 32. So we're making sure that no child is falling through the cracks, and we're really proud of that work.
I would add, as I'm listening, that the deliberate SEL curriculum is another piece of that puzzle too, because instead of being reactive to a child's behaviors or struggles, you know, we're being proactive in giving them the tools up front, which has got to improve their access to academics as well, right?
It's fun. It's been fun to see that impact and in conversation with students, hear them
They've got the
conjure up
language,
that
right?
language that they've learned. Yeah, it's exciting to see.
We'll go to Wentworth.
Yes.
Right, so continuing on up the K to 12 or pre-K to 12 journey, next up is Wentworth, and they say all, you know, the learning starts at K2, it all begins here, and then I like to say all roads lead to Wentworth. So this is really the first school where all of the students come together in one, you know, larger school, but I feel so proud of the work that we do to kind of have the best of both worlds at Wentworth. It's a larger school with all of the opportunity, safety, and beauty that it offers, but also feels for students like a smaller school once you're inside Wentworth and connected with your teachers and team and cohorts and learning communities. So I'm going to kind of emphasize some of that throughout this presentation and attempt to not be repetitive to some of the things that you've already heard. So right as you walk through the doors at Wentworth, one of the very first things that you see is our Learning Commons, which is what we call the library. And just some circulation data there. And I think it's really impressive and kind of speaks to two different things. On any given day that you check our circulation data, more than 80% of our students have materials checked out. And that I think speaks to the fact that our kids are engaged in readers and are excited about that. And I think it also speaks to the fact that we've really worked hard to build our collection and ensure that it meets the needs of our students. So the collection development and management in the Learning Commons is something that we're really, really proud of. The circulation is like the highest across the district, and the kids are so engaged with the materials there. I included just, you know, these are some of the things that you find around about school ratings and things like that. And I am proud of this because it represents, there are more than 288 elementary schools in Maine, and it's not just based on not just based on proficiency, like academic proficiency, but also diversity and student to staff ratios and a lot of other data points. So I think that that's something to definitely be proud of. And really that speaks to what our students are telling us very consistently in the Panorama survey data, that our relationships are very strong at Wentworth, more than 92% of students, which is like a very high nationally normed rating for relationships feeling strong and connected at school and in communities. Transitioning to what we offer after school, this is something that you're going to hear a little bit more about in the next slides, but we've really built this co-curricular after-school club offering. And for anyone who has a child at Wentworth, you know, it's like a big hustle to get signed up, but we're really continuing to grow that so that there is an opportunity and something for everyone. So there are 12 different types of clubs at Wentworth, but those different types of clubs are offered over 40 session offerings. So there's a diversity in the opportunity, but also the amount and number of times it's offered. So that allows for, there are over 700 participants, like over 700 enrollments in co-curricular clubs, which is pretty remarkable at a 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade school. And let's see, the next thing that I want to talk a little bit about is our garden. So I know Freyla's little Zoom photo is up there, but if you see it on your screen, the upper right-hand corner is a picture of kids in the school garden. And that's just something that, again, when we moved to Wentworth, to the current Wentworth school, it was such a blank slate. It was a chain link fence over a piece of like partially grown in grass. Mitchell remembers, he was there. And now it is just this thriving outdoor learning environment with every amenity that you would hope for a garden to have. And all of our kids are participating in that work. The past growing season, we hosted 168 classroom visits. So that's something that we've really grown to, pun intended, I guess. Because previously it was more so students were getting access to the garden if their teacher was really comfortable doing that kind of work. And with the addition through some contracted services money, like a very small investment has made this huge impact, because having a contracted services teacher out there who's offering like a set of lessons or a DIY lesson throughout the growing season that rotates on a weekly basis has expanded the access for all students. So 168 classroom visits is remarkable. Equally, and that's them with the carrot harvest. And we're really, it's really wonderful for students to be able to see like something that they plant from seed, nurture, grow, weed, harvest, and then is used in our fruit and veggie bar in the cafeteria. I mean, that whole, you know, seed to plate process, to be able to experience that at your school is really special. Also equally proud of the work that our kids are doing in coding, STEM, and engineering. All of our students participate. That's something unique for an elementary school, to have that as part of our, you know, weekly allied arts rotation. I think it speaks to the level that students achieve by the time they reach, you know, middle school and high school, that they are really coming with this super strong foundation in STEM, that they're engaged in the engineering and design process, that they are coding, they are doing robotics. We are starting our first like robotics league team this year too, and that they're 3D printing. The other day, a student was playing with a fidget at lunchtime. And I was like, oh, that's a really cool. She was like, oh, thanks, I 3D printed it. Oh, cool. I wouldn't know how to begin to do that. That's really awesome. You're 9. So it just really, really remarkable what these kids are capable of. And then echoing what Katie already spoke to, our proficiency for students who are at or above state expectations in mathematics and reading continues to be really strong, and I think speaks to the commitment to all of these other fast facts, all, success begets success, and they feel really supported and engaged and part of something that is special at Wentworth. Go to the next slide, continuing my brag journey on our school. You've heard a lot about our whole school ruler implementation already. It was really a main focus of the BOE highlight presentation that Gabrielle and I did this past winter. So I won't get too much into it, but just in summary, we selected the ruler materials to use last year, really focused on the adult component of SEL. I'm just really giving cliff notes for you too, Kathy, because I know that you'll just say ditto. Because this is something that we're using at both Wentworth and the middle school. So last year focused on the adult portion of SEL, and then this year really rolled it out for our entire school, and it has become such a central foundation for all of the work that we're doing. I think that the collective efforts last year led to something very special this year in the creation of Community Day, because Community Day is taking place, as you know, on all of our early release days. It's meeting a lot of different needs. We use that day as the anchor for the focus of ruler for the month, and rolling out what the new topic and focus and emphasis will be. And then we carry that work through our in-class SEL lessons, build it into the morning announcements, really just try to infuse it throughout our school day. But on those community days, we begin with a whole school assembly to roll out the topic. And the thing that is kind of a twofer or a threefer on Community Day is not only is it super focused on this very important foundational work, but it's also running a completely different schedule, which is a grade level schedule. And that's not an opportunity that students at Wentworth had previously had, because we've so purposefully created our vertical teams, our vertical learning communities with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders together to create that like school within a school feeling and that smaller school connection, which we maintain has enormous benefits for students. But then building in this regular ongoing opportunity for students to also see, if they're in 3rd grade in the green learning community, they're seeing the 3rd graders from red and purple and blue, and spending time with them. And it just has been wildly successful. So we're very, very proud of that work this year. And you'll hear a little bit more about what we're looking forward to in our goals portion for the next slide. The next thing, this was an investment new in this year's budget. So I've received a lot of flack from my colleagues about calling it a WIN teacher, but I stand by the name. It stands for what I need, and truly the professional who's in that role has embraced it and created something beyond my wildest dreams and imagination of what this role could do for our students and for our school. It's been an absolute game changer for us at Wentworth. And so the teacher, and I'm going to use her name because I think she really deserves the shout out, Michelle McPherson, has stepped into this role. And she was a classroom teacher and a lead teacher previously. She's really familiar with all of our curriculum across the grade level. So she's able to just step in and meet students right where they are. She's joined the academic support team and really is connecting regularly with all of our support services to just fill in the gaps and to meet really specialized and unique student needs, to make sure that we're really catching each student exactly where they are. So she's doing a lot of work similar to what I heard from K2 around their early intervention teachers. So students who are new to the district, either if they're from Old Orchard Beach right next door, or if they're from Central Africa, they need support moving into a brand new school, getting up to speed on, just speaking Wentworth, really, and getting up to speed on the curriculum and the expectations and filling in gaps and all of those supports. And that looks different student to student and requires a different amount of time depending on what those level of needs are. So she supported students new to the district, short-term and long-term students who've had limited or interrupted formal education. She's really done a lot of support for those kiddos, helping out students who are going through chronic or acute health needs, so students who've been hospitalized or have missed school for those types of reasons. She is supporting students who maybe are working through some school avoidance or chronic absenteeism for a variety of reasons, and giving a lot of additional support for executive functioning and social emotional learning for students at like that tier 2 and even tier 3 level. So at the time of putting this presentation together, she had 70 students on her caseload for short or long-term support. So really a big bang for the buck. And she's doing a wonderful job, and I'm excited to continue to grow this work. And then last year, we also were able to add a 1.0 FTE classroom teacher just to maintain and meet our class size goals. That's not, new or revolutionary work, but it is work that matters and is important. And our range at Wentworth, the target range is 18 to 22 students, and we've been able to stay within that range with the addition of that classroom teacher, which happened to be at grade 5 this year. Anytime that the ratio is lower, you're better able to foster that improved academic performance, make those connections. It's just more individualized opportunities when we stay within that range, and it's critically important. And then finally, I spoke about this a little bit in the highlights, but expanding our opportunities for students to access like high quality after school co-curricular club programming. It's another opportunity for kids to let's go sign up for chess club. We can see each other after school. So just those social connections, but also just practicing, getting them ready for the super high participation once they get to the upper grade levels that I'm sure you'll hear about from Mr. Gage, but just a lot of opportunity for students to start getting involved and getting engaged beyond their typical school day and extending that learning. So not only were we able to add more sections and more variety of clubs to make sure that there are, again, 700 discrete opportunities for students. So everybody could, in theory, sign up for one club. But the budget also enabled us to add a co-curricular club coordinator who has really helped with not only ensuring a high quality programming, but there's just a lot of nuts and bolts when you have little kids after school. I don't know if you would assume this, but they don't always remember what their after school plan is. And sometimes they might take the bus when they were supposed to stay up. So it's just a lot of checks and balances and calling home and making sure that they're where they're meant to be, verifying attendance, communication with families, supporting that sign up process, which is the first time that families are engaged in using Arbiter and, signing up for a club in that way. So it requires a lot of support, logistics, communication, and adding that support just in a small stipended position has made a really big difference in the quality of our programming. I would say I did fuzzy math and looking at all of the stipends for all of the advisors, plus the stipend for the advisor, the coordinator, plus, just materials and that sort of thing. It's right around a $30,000 total investment to impact 700 kids throughout the entire year. Plus there's a little bit of revenue offset because there is a fee. So it's a low dollar amount for a really big impact. And I think that that's a success of the co-curricular club programming at Wentworth. And then goals and priorities. I don't think anything is going to be shocking or new information. I spoke about the Learning Commons already. The left-hand side is a quick picture of our Learning Commons, which is a beautiful and thriving and robust space. I took that one after school, so it's empty, but last year, after several years of advocating for a dedicated librarian for K-2 and a dedicated librarian for Wentworth School, we finally were able to get that into the budget last year. And we were so, so thrilled at doing that. And our current K-5 librarian shifted her focus to be just K-2. And so we tried mightily to find a qualified, amazing librarian to come on and take the lead at Wentworth. And it's a position that we've waited a really long time for, so it's not a position that we're willing to compromise on. And we've been unable to find a qualified candidate to this point. It's already re-advertised. I think we're gonna go for like, hopefully fourth time or third time will be a charm. Here it's re-advertised, I think, in a better timeline because, as you know, the budget was kind of passed pretty late in the game last year. And then to go out with a new position at that time, it's just tricky timing for somebody, you know, a qualified, experienced librarian to leave their district at that time. So we're really hopeful for this year to have somebody in that position full-time to start the next school year. Meg Blakemore, who was the K-5 librarian, is focused on K-2, but she has stayed on and kind of overseeing some of the Wentworth pieces too. We've stayed very status quo with a strong team of ed techs in the Learning Commons who should be commended for the work that they're doing. So we're doing great, but looking forward to really moving that work forward and accelerating all of the potential that exists within that programming. So that's a goal and will be an area of focus for next year. Expanding the learning opportunities to increase emotional intelligence through Ruler. Next year will continue to be a focus. You know, we'll be in our year 2 implementation. So we've got all of year 2 implementation with students, year 3 at Wentworth. So we've got all of these foundational pieces in place. And now next year, we'll be really looking to differentiate for each of the grade levels because now the next year's 4th and 5th graders will have already had that strong foundation. And what are the signature tools? What is the foundational work of Ruler? And next year will be even further integrated into their academics and integrated across content areas. Even more so than this year. So that will be a continued goal next year. And then staying focused on refining our integrated student support and response systems through MTSS. You heard a lot about that from K-2 and in curriculum, so I won't be repetitive, but we recognize like there are a lot of amazing and meaningful interventions currently already taking place. We're very proud of our data and our response systems to ensure universal screening and monitoring to ensure that we're meeting all students where they are. This year, we've been very intentionally focused on that tier 1 instruction, like my K2 colleagues mentioned. And next year, we'll be continuing to kind of bring that work forward and really diving into a more systemic approach to examining our data and implementing interventions and supports. And not in addition to supporting our students who may be striving for grade level expectations, but really moving students who are at and above grade level expectations at that same pace. So making sure that we're very focused on exactly where students are and moving them forward. So those are some of the goals for next year. And I think that is it. All right, Marty.
I think this is time for questions for all 3 of our presentations.
All right, Freyla, do you have anything? Maybe I don't know. All right, what about?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Going back on the WIN teacher,
Mhm.
sounds like it's been a great thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
My wondering is one WIN teacher enough? Because 70 on her caseload seems like an astronomical number to me. So yeah, is one enough?
I mean, no, Jenna.
No.
Of course, like more support is for more students, right? 70 is not like at this discrete
Right.
moment. She's had a lot of short-term interventions too, so that's been 70 students over the course of the year. So she's not like currently carrying 70 students that she's trying to meet the needs of on a daily basis. That's over the course of this year, still really impressive and a heavy lift. You know, we did discuss that, you know, adding an ed tech to support some of the interventions that she's like specifically designing just to, you know, spread the support and just engage more students in that learning. It's just not the budget year to do that right now, but something that we'll continue to monitor and do our best with in moving forward. And that I think we have some opportunities across that tier 2 support team to really lean in and engage and work together. And that's something that I didn't anticipate happening to the degree that it is. Instead of creating a whole separate admissions team and system for the WIN teacher, instead, she's engaging with the existing admissions teams processes and then deciding collaboratively, okay, where are the students' needs best met? Okay, can this be done through literacy support? Or do I need to pick up pieces of it? So it's been, you know, not just party of one.
Yes.
She's infused herself with a full team.
So it's similar to like the conversation that we were having about like what's happening at K2,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah.
what we're finding is, you know, because of the number of different types of support positions we have now, we have like this think tank, if you will, right? And everyone can kind of wrap their arms around figuring out like, what is it that this student needs? And again, right, like your maiden voyage, this year. And so I think, you know, lots of great inroads. And I'm sure like that will get refined as you move to year 2 and, you know, kind of land your feet on the ground a little bit.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to me because I had a conversation with the K2 folks when we were doing some of our assessment of staffing and who's doing what and how are we using the folks that we currently have and particularly these new ads that we've had in the recent 2 budget cycles. And it's just so cool to have, I'm gonna use the toolbox analogy, right? Because, you know, I could be a wrench and you could be a screwdriver. Would you like to be a screwdriver? I'm sorry,
Whatever you need.
I shouldn't make stupid puns, but the, you know, point being that you have all these folks with these different approaches, different backgrounds, different tools. You know, not that we're not all having the same kinds of PD, but it's just so interesting to have that
Yeah, we're not operating in
breadth of
silos.
capacity, right?
Right.
One of the exciting pieces about that too, that I would add is that we're so fortunate that our student support team at K2 in particular is so skilled and so flexible. And they're communicative with one another so that where a need emerges, it's met by someone on the team who's ready, willing, and able in terms of time and skill to address the need. So that's been really exciting to watch that develop amongst the team.
Well, I think, to build up of Jenna's question, we started this conversation yesterday, and I don't think it's any secret for anybody here. I think you were sitting at the table or behind me. You know, we fought very hard for that position, and it was one we almost cut. And it wasn't until you said to us that this is keeping kids out of the special education program, that we went to bat with council, and you saw the outcome, and we fought for one of Chris's positions as well, that was going to be cut. And so I think when we think about this, our conversation last night was, certainly budget dollars aren't the end all be all for what we're talking about, right? With these interventionalist positions, the WIN position, and, you know, I know you're, you know, making light, but maybe it is the name, I don't know. But, when we're talking about the budget, there is a very real, savings with these positions. And it's really, really important that we know that data going in, because I think it makes it easier to build a case for, yes, I would need another WIN teacher, or yes, I do need another interventionist, because this is what happens with this one teacher who has seen 70 students. How many of those 70 were able to be, their case is able to be managed through the tier support versus a special education program? And so if we have that number, I would like to know that number. I don't know if you know it off the top of your head, but maybe as we like go on, that is the data I would like to know. And same with the interventionalist positions, because if you are, I know this is a tough budget year. I really, really appreciate, I will say this right now in front of all you, I really appreciate that you're considering the community and you're considering the ask, and you're looking at this as a, is this the year for us to really add in, or is this the year that we really take a look at making do? And I personally appreciate that. With a caveat, if you need something, tell us
Yeah.
and give us the data. You are really good, Kelly, with data. It is one of my most favorite things about you. And so I'm telling you right now, if you need something and you can say, this particular teacher saw 70 kids, which kept 50 out of special education program, that saved us X number of dollars, and we see an upcoming intake, and we think we need another one, tell us.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think that like what you're saying makes perfect sense, but it's tricky because it's children that we're talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah,
right?
it's
And
hard.
so
It's a
it's hard
weird
to know,
conversation.
like,
Yeah.
it's hard
kind
to
of
be able to
proving
have
it
like a
right.
crystal ball to know,
Yeah.
like, if not this, then
Right.
that,
Right.
right?
And the other thing that I would say, and again, Chris can certainly jump into the conversation too, but I think that the reality is that you are not going to avoid every student
Absolutely.
from from not requiring special education, right?
Correct.
What we have done over the past several years is to build these robust intermediary steps and supports to help us get more information about, is this just a lack of skill? And if we build that skill and fill
Yes.
that gap, that student will be able to be successful. Or is there something else at work for a student, right?
Right, I think what you're doing is you're placing them where they need to be.
You're working it through.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're working it as they need it.
Yeah, what would you say, Chris?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And I think the one thing that is really hard to predict is the nature of the kids that are coming in to join us, right?
Mhm.
And there will be some kids who will respond really well to those interventions. And those are kids that we can keep in the general education setting in their least restrictive environment. Those are all great things. We know all the reasons why those are important. And then, the number of kids we have that don't respond as well to those interventions, that's the part that's hard to predict. And that's where we would look, to special education services for sure.
Right.
But absolutely. And it's also really helpful for us in more clearly defining the work that we are doing with kids in special education, right? If we have really strong interventions before we're at the referral phase, right? Because that could mean less time in special education for a particular student. And it could also mean kind of less time overall, right? If we have a really clearly identified gap and a need, and we've got a great definition of that, our interventions can be more effective. And our goal for most kids is to eventually get them back out into that general education setting where they're ready to do so. So having that foundation, I think, would help us do that work a little more quickly.
And just to add to like 70 is a lot, and granted, it's not all at once in one classroom, like she's not supporting
Right.
70 kids individually, I mean, all by herself. Our numbers may look a lot smaller, even if you added all of them together at the 3 schools. But the amount of time people spend with kids can be very different too. So where you might see 5 kindergartners on one of my teacher's caseloads, she could be spending 3 hours a day with some kids, waiting for them to be regulated enough to safely go back into the classroom. So that's a very different story than, teaching somebody who came from Old Orchard Beach how to speak Wentworthese with learning communities and that kind of thing, right? It's a very different, there's different needs that are,
Yeah.
some kids need half an hour and some kids need 3 hours a day and some, it's just,
And
you
that
just
is the
never
beauty
know.
of that position too, that it is for some students, 30 minutes twice a week for
That's it.
3 weeks, right? For some students, she's really delivering a tier 3 intervention and spending, a lot of time with those individuals, and to have that flexibility in a gen ed position, that's what I feel like has been a huge game changer, that she's not solely focused on one specific content area, but like jack of all trades, super glue, silly putty, all the analogies, right? So it's been really successful, and I think just like solidifying the processes and the supports and the hows and all of those pieces this year, like we're in a really great position to just move forward with what we have next year and strengthen it. And then, and you know me, I'll come back to the table if we.
So just
Thank
as a
you.
time check, we're running about 20 minutes behind, and I know we do have a hard stop at 11 because we have another meeting with a different person. So
I have two questions, and I'm gonna really try to not ask a lot of questions today. Okay. I don't know if this is Katie or if this is Kelly, but is this the first year we would have test results after adding in the appointment days at the start of the year?
No.
Is this the second
This
time?
is the second.
Second time, okay. So we have 2 years of data since we added those appointment
Mhm.
days in. Can we go back and look,
Mhm.
maybe this is like a for your presentation in June?
Yeah.
But, can we go back and look at the numbers prior to appointment days and the, numbers post for the 2 years that we have? The reading scores in particular is what I'm thinking. Have they increased since those appointment days have been added? The numbers are really good, but this is again, when we talk about at the calendar time, when we talk about creating those appointment days, I know they're not always easy for parents, but these are the things we can fall back on, right? Like, yes, they're not easy and maybe it's an inconvenience, but these are the gains we're getting, right? And so, I would love to have that if possible.
We can look at that and build out a few other data points too, like how many more units are
Yes,
accomplished and that kind of
yes.
thing. So
Yeah,
sure.
all of that data would be really nice for us to have.
Mhm.
And then my last question, is for, K2. I know we talk a lot about building. We started talking yesterday about the in-between. We knew when this didn't pass last year, we needed an in-between solution, something to bridge the gap. And I just want to ask you, because I'm looking, so Monday night, which I know you were there, and there was some new charts and new information that came out about enrollment. So we have in 2028-29 school year, you're expected to have 817 kids based on live births across K2. And if we add a contingency, it's 842. And so, is there any place that you have on your current campuses to place those? Not, of course, not understanding which school they're going to. Where would you put those 817 kids?
The 3 to 5, you mean?
No, that's K2.
well, and
Well,
again, I
that's
think
200 more kids than
Correct.
we have now.
Correct.
So across 3 schools, I don't know. I don't know where they,
Right.
I mean, they
You
would
don't
all
have
be in a
space.
homeroom somewhere, but the homerooms would probably be at 25 instead of 18 and
and
But no
respectfully,
no space on your property to
Not
absorb
currently.
200 students.
not currently.
Thank you.
any other questions? All right, well, we are going to take a short break. We have some great snacks for everyone. And then when we come back, we will start with special services. we're back.
All right, so I'll start off with some fast facts, and I know we're a little bit behind in time, so I'll be fast with my facts. So overall, a slight increase from last year in the number of students who have IEPs. We're at 16.7%. 479 students total. Just a shade under 300 students that have a Section 504 accommodation plan. That's a little over 10% of the population. And then this is a number that we talked about last year. If you combine those two groups, we have 778 students who have been identified with a disability through either an IEP or a 504 plan. And this represents 27% of our student population. So again, 27% of our kids have been through an evaluation process that has identified a disability. And we are providing either accommodations or direct programming to support students around that disability. We also have a GATES program under special services. Currently 7.2% of our kids are participating in the GATES program. We have 116 students identified as multilingual learners. That's about 4% of our population. And as you saw from the K2 slide, a lot of different languages represented. Right now we have about 23. That's a little bit of a moving target depending on who's coming and going. 11 students right now qualifying as homeless under McKinney-Vento. And then we have 50 students projected to enter kindergarten in the fall that currently have IEPs through CDS. And this is a number that we spoke about last year as well, when I think we had 51 or 52. These are the highest numbers that we've ever seen. If you go back a few years, you know, a typical year for us would be between high 20s and low 30s. So another significant increase this year. In terms of successes and accomplishments, one piece of work that we've engaged in this year is working with our teams around trauma-informed instruction. So this has been work we've done with our K2 team. We've had 29 staff participate in monthly trainings with Dr. Rebecca Bickford. Dr. Bickford is both a clinical psychologist and a certified BCBA. She used to be the director at Margaret Murphy Center for Children down in Saco. She's been a great resource for us, especially in terms of bringing evidence-based practices and training to our staff. So that's been a great project for us this year. You'll see that as a goal when we get to that slide for next year as well. Kate was so excited, she jumped right ahead. Another success for us this year, we had a new special education position at Wentworth that we brought on board last year as part of the budget process, and that has really increased our flexibility around targeted instruction around evidence-based science of reading programs for kids, particularly with deficits in decoding and reading fluency. We've talked about in the past that this is a big need for us. And this position has really helped us to both identify groups of kids that can work together effectively and also identify the different programs that we need to help those students make progress. One size does not fit all. And as you can see from this slide, we have a number of different programs that we're using. We're very fortunate. We have a uniquely skilled group of teachers at Wentworth to deliver this instruction, and this additional position has really allowed us to use their talents most effectively. Another big area of accomplishment for this year for us has been the use of augmentative and alternative communication, as well as looking at assistive technology. So as you know, or may know, we have an AAC/AT specialist, and she is providing training to staff. I think we have on the slide here about 45 to 50 staff this year. A lot of that work is around working with kids who might use an augmentative communication device as really their sole means of communicating with the outside world. We talked last year, and you'll see the next bullet here is around our functional life skills program, but we've had a significant increase in the number of students in our functional life skills programs in Scarborough over the last year. And this position has been really critical in identifying the right device for kids. They are complex and they require training initially. And then as kids' skills develop, right, we need to go back into the software and update. So this position has really been instrumental in doing that effectively. that is a huge part of our functional life skills programs because a big thing that we're working on with a lot of kids is using language instead of behavior to communicate needs, right? And so I really can't overstate the importance of this position and the work that she does. She also does evaluations for identifying augmentative communication devices, both for kids who are new to us this year and also for kids who might need something different. And she is on track to complete 24 of those evals. Those are evals that we used to contract out to Pine Tree in the past. So great work happening there. And then our last request is, as I just mentioned, we opened a new functional life skills program at the Eight Corners School this year with 8 students, and that is a big job, and we have been super fortunate. Again, with the staff we have in that program, they've done a fantastic job of building that program up this year from scratch. Again, these are kids who are getting work on basic communication skills. Some kids are getting work on self-care. It's just a very complex group of students, and it's been a really successful year in that program. And so really big kudos to the group at Eight Corners and Anne as well for her help in getting that program on. So that's our successes and accomplishments, and then our goals for the coming year. Our goal, of course, number one goal is always compliance. And as I mentioned a minute ago, we've got another big incoming kindergarten class this year. So at this point, we know of 15 students entering K that currently have ed tech support on their IEP. 4 of the students we know about currently have one-to-one support needs, and we believe they'll require a functional life skills program. There's 1 student we still have to go visit to find out for sure. The other students receiving adult support are getting that in inclusive settings and a regular classroom setting in pre-K. They'll continue to need that support in the fall when they come in with us. And the other piece to know about here is that, of course, every year we have kids, as Anne, I think, mentioned earlier, that come into kindergarten that have not accessed any services through CVS, so they may not have been identified with a disability. We have kids who may not have participated in any type of preschool program. And so the last 2 years, we've had 4 kindergarten students across the K2 buildings who have been identified for special education services and have required ed tech support as well. So, you know, we have to be realistic, I think, in building in and thinking about the adult support needs and the compliance piece. The other piece around compliance for the fall is our speech and language numbers. So again, another really big group coming in. We have 35 kids. They're going to be receiving speech and language services. That's a total of 39 service hours. And we don't have a lot of kids graduating with a lot of time. So that's another challenge for us for the coming year to meet that need. The next goal and priority for us is the work that we've been doing with Dr. Bickford. We're going to continue doing that work next year. And a part of her work that I didn't mention a minute ago has been working with our 2 K2 social life skills programs to kind of enhance and develop our evidence-based approaches in those 2 programs to build consistency between the 2 programs as well. And this coming year, we're going to have her work with our middle school social life skills program as well. And then another priority for us related to the budget is looking at reading instruction at the middle school. So as we just talked about a minute ago, we've increased our programming for reading at Wentworth last year through the budget. This isn't an additional position, but this is looking at a different reading program. We have a really solid foundation now at the middle school in terms of how we're doing our instruction around basic reading skills and how quickly kids can read, how well they can break words apart. But the next step for us, I think, is to identify a program that we can really focus in on reading comprehension, right? As kids are moving into that reading to learn, phase, certainly by middle school for sure. So bringing this program on board will help us have more consistency, I think, across our resource range of targeting the comprehension piece. And as you can see from the slide, we have a pretty large number of kids who are getting all of their ELA instruction in the source group right now, 62 kids currently at the middle school. So this would impact a lot of students. And that is, yeah, those are our goals and priorities.
That's some fast talking, Chris.
All right. Okay, I'm Dr. Caroline, principal at Scarborough Middle School. And as you'll see, our first 4 fast facts are data. As Katie shared, 72% of our 8th grade students on last year's MEA Science performed at or above compared to the state. We actually have had some other middle schools in the state reach out to us to ask to come in and visit, observe, and talk to our science teachers about our success. In last year's assessment data in ELA reading, we had 82.5 students at or above grade level. And then in mathematics, 54.6% of our students scored at or above grade level. And anytime we look at our percents, you know, we are looking to increase them. And that really speaks to a lot of the data work that we've been doing, as well as our MTSS process. And in math, we have several years ago, you approved through the budget an additional student support ed tech. That ed tech is focusing on mathematics. Our math interventionist also teaches 4 co-taught classes. We have one 6th grade, one at 7th, and 2 at 8th grade. And so again, when we look at that data, we're looking at it in screening. Any student below proficiency, putting in those supports. And then, you know, we're also looking at how are our kids doing towards the standards and learning goals in each of those subjects? Where are we very strong? What are the areas that we really need to focus on? And also our bridge teacher is the equivalent to the WIN teacher at Wentworth. And our bridge teacher works very closely with students in mathematics and reading for students who might be out with a concussion and have missed class and just need to come in for a short period of time for instruction. So those supports have just been game changers, as you know, Kelly has said. And then in our panorama data, that is from this winter, very recent data. 87% of our students reported favorably on supportive relationships, and then 79 with self-management. Panorama also has a category called somewhat. I somewhat have a relationship. That does not go on the favorable side. So when you look at that data, you know, you see a lot more kids who do have a relationship, but they haven't rated it quite as high. With panorama data, we still have that area that we've seen in the last few years on emotional regulation. And so that is an area that we'll continue to work on. And that's one of the reasons why we chose ruler curriculum to work on that area. And then, of course, we're always looking at our, you know, how we're doing with our communications. And looking at our January, we had 1,886 visits to our family newsletter, which is actually up from last year. And when it comes to our learning commons, again, as Kelly said, and you know, the checkouts and the digital checkouts, our numbers are up, but a lot of that is the work of our librarian really working on that collection and bringing in current books, award-winning books, the way they display the books. And so that has gone up. Okay, we move on to successes and accomplishments. I shared this information at the board presentation in December. So if anybody wants to go in, there was a clip from one of our main outdoor learning and some pictures and things. But with our chorus, the addition of the part-time position last year, we do have an increase of 150% of students taking chorus. Our chorus teacher is working with 100 students. We have 50 at the 6th grade, 15 in 7th, and 35 in 8th. And this first concert that they had, it was the first, I was sitting in the audience, this is the first time that we've ever had just a middle school chorus concert. And it was really, for me, a big moment and exciting. But I'll put out a shout out on Tuesday, March 25th at 6:30. It's our all-town chorus concert. And it is amazing. It's 2nd grade through 12th grade. So if you can get to any performance, I would highly suggest that you get to that one.
And your chorus is rehearsing where?
Our chorus is in the cafeteria. And then they do go into the band room for the 6th grade with 50 students, because that teacher's on a preparation. So they can use that. But no, they share the cafeteria with the percussion teacher.
Right, so, so that's just a great example of some of the limitations of programming that we are able to offer are constrained by the building space that we have or do not have.
Yeah, and then for our intervention period during RISE, our French teacher has been very kind to let him use that room. It's at the end of one of the wings, and so it has a permanent wall so that kids can sing and play the instrument. The sound doesn't go into the next classroom. And then the French teacher's doubling up with the other French teacher for that intervention block. And then we have had our 2nd year of our ruler implementation, 1st year being with the teachers. This year it's with students, and the lessons take place on Mondays during crew. That's smaller groups of 12 with all of the staff in their kind of advisory groups. And the members on the SEL building committee, they cover and teach those classes if there's a staff member out. So I've been very fortunate to be able to teach some of the ruler lessons on Monday. And if I'm not teaching, I ask to be a part of a group, and the students welcome me into their group as we're doing the lesson. So it's very nice, and it lets us as members of the building committee, just have a real pulse on how the lessons are going. So we can make adjustments for next year. But we've been focusing on the tools this year: the charter, the mood meter, the best self, and then the blueprint. I did want to just remind everybody of what ruler stands for. So ruler is really building that emotional intelligence, recognizing that you're having an emotional response, understanding what is it? Am I angry or am I sad? Labeling. So what, really identifying, and then expressing. And then regulating. Do I want to change how I'm feeling? What strategies can I use? Or do I just want to stay here where I am? Then we've had, of course, our main outdoor learning grant, which has been amazing. The grant was really for some materials, but also for professional development. So this past summer, we had all 3 grade levels work on developing units. The 6th grade teachers partnered with the Gulf of Maine Research Center to create a unit on crabs for all 6th graders to experience, and they did their field work at Higgins Beach. The 7th grade integrated learning team has partnered with the Scarborough Land Trust, Pineland Farms, the Wells National Research Reserve, the University of New England, and they've created units on forest exploration, maple sugaring and maple syrup production, the science of snow and extreme weather and history, and the estuary. And I will say they've already collected buckets of the sap, and one of the teachers is going to take it home now and turn it into maple syrup. Yeah, they've been talking about, okay, how can we get some equipment here to be able to do it on our grounds, but that's next step. And then all of our 8th grade students had the opportunity to perform their field work at Fort Williams on geology. And then our movement break and recess. So we've really been fortunate this year to be able to go out many, many days. And I will tell you, it is wonderful now that our snow is melting, because it was challenging with the big snow banks, because middle school students love the snow and to play with the snow and to climb the huge piles. And it's like, no, you don't want to have wet socks for the rest of the day. I'm sure Kelly and primary see the same thing with the love of snow, but that's great. And I will say, when we've been doing our building tours, that's one of the things that would be lovely, is if we could have an actual area that was designated for recess. Okay, so goals and priorities. Next year for ruler, we're really looking to then expand into the grade level lessons. And so 6th, 7th, and 8th grade will continue to keep the tools alive, but also really dig into some of the units in the categories of community, safety, and climate, a unit on emotions matter, a unit on self and social awareness, unit on personal values and emotional regulation, and then a unit on empathy and perspective taking. And again, as Kelly mentioned, building that also into the core classes more. I'm seeing, bits of that here and there with, our school charter posted. I've heard teachers say, okay, how do we be our best selves when we're working in groups? And then they take, all of those characteristics and students, know that they need to be good listeners, respect others' opinions. So that's been great. Okay, our ELA curriculum. So this year they've really worked at, with Katie leading, looking at the units that they have, looking at the NWEA data, what are the standards and learning goals that, we're strong in, what are the areas of growth? And they have identified nonfiction as an area to grow. And so next year, Springboard is no longer available. And so they will be looking at really high quality curriculum materials and piloting that next year. And again, looking at next year, we'll have our data on our main assessment to look at. And then we've really worked hard on attendance, and decreasing our chronic absenteeism. So I think, we really found before COVID, we were down below 10% at the middle school. And that's been a goal. It's a state goal that we're below 10%. Last year, as of the end of February, we were at 15% chronic absenteeism rate, and now we're at 11%. But again, we are trying to get lower than that. And there are some organizations that have resources for us to use, Count Me In and Attendance Matters. And we do have a district attendance committee, and we've been looking at the communications that we can add to our family newsletter on the big picture level, but also all of the communications we make with individual families to help with support. And again, some of those supports can be our bridge teacher and our tier 2 supports, because oftentimes there's a barrier for students who coming into school, and it's that they need that extra support. And then, of course, our MTSS system, continuing to work on that with a big focus on data digging into the data at all different levels. But one of the areas that we've started to work on is also students looking at their data. So we've been developing some protocols for students to then be shared their NWEA data. They can see their strengths and see their areas for growth, and then working on some goal setting. You know, ownership, like why are we taking this test? Why does it matter? And because it does, it informs our instruction. And I think this past week, we also did a winter NWEA test this winter, and students more than ever were like, how did I do? How did I do? Because we surveyed students to ask them some questions about test taking. I think that really made them think about, you know, the importance of the test and what works well for them for testing. And we implemented some of the things. They wanted gum. So we gave everybody some gum. But they asked afterwards. So a lot of teachers have started that goal setting, but we want to put that protocol in place.
We're gonna keep going through the sections and then have questions coming up.
All right.
Okay.
So a lot of this, I apologize to the board, because a lot of this will probably be data that you've seen before, since we've shared a little bit with you for various reasons over the course of this year. But at any rate, always good to revisit it, brag, talk, ask those kinds of things about our data. So fast facts, this slide has indicators of various things at the high school. I think some of it is programming, and then some of it is what our students are up to and how they're taking advantage of our programming. So one thing I thought might be of interest to the board is, on average, so what I did with this was I tended to look back a little bit. I think I'd like to show trends as opposed to just showing this year compared to last. So a lot of the data that's put before you here is since COVID, which is sort of like a BC moment, if you will. It feels like in education. So looking back since 2021, we're in the throes of our course registration process now. If you're not familiar with high school operations, this is a multi-month process. It really starts in January unofficially, but it really ramps up in February, March. To give you the size of our programming, we have 6,500 course requests plus. Sometimes that's 6,700 course requests that come in. But we have 6,500 on average that come in annually during the course registration process. So it's always a joy for us to take all those requests and try to assemble a schedule that meets as many needs as possible. I thought that might be an interesting data point for folks to know. In terms of what students do with those courses, they're doing a lot of awesome things, which I think is great. So we've got on average 38 students taking dual enrollment credits every year. So we have a number of opportunities through local universities and community colleges. We manage a couple of different partnerships and programs with SMCC, USM, where students can go to a college, a local college or university, take a course there, have it count as both high school credit and as college credit. So it kind of opens up a transcript. Our biggest one is the Spring Ahead program. And typically we'll have around 24 seniors or so each year take a full course load at SMCC. So 4 college courses. And they graduate with, if it's successful, they graduate with a semester of credit, which is awesome. Another interesting data point at the high school, in the past couple of years, high school students, Scarborough High School students have performed 104 points better on average on the SAT than national average, which I think is astonishing. And if you look at it year to year, that number is actually increasing. The gap is growing this year compared to last year. But again, I think it's a good indicator of where our students are at in terms of post-secondary readiness. Another thing I wanted to call out was this past year, we received recognition from the College Board, an honor roll silver distinction for the strength of our AP programming. A little bit of data about that. We've got 23 AP courses at the high school. Last year, we administered 677 AP AP exams to over 300 students. Those are scored on a 1 through 5 scale. And typically 3 is the cut point for being eligible for college credit. And our average score for that was a 3.4, which is outstanding. 3 usually on any given test, the average score for a year is right around 3. It might be in that 2.9 or maybe that 3.1 range. But once you start to get outside those standard deviations, you're doing really well. And to have, I think, a 3.4 average over 677 exams is just outstanding. So the health of our AP programming, I think, is really, really good. A couple other things I wanted to call out on average. So this is again based on the last few years. 89% of our students are going to 2 or 4 year colleges. Our graduating students are going to 2 or 4 year colleges, which is again outstanding. And then about 10% entering the military, pursuing a technical certificate, or entering the workforce. The last publicly available data point that I'm aware of from the state was 2022. So as a point of comparison, in 2022, 54% of high school graduates in the state of Maine were going to a 2 or 4 year college. We're sitting at 89% for this past year, which I think is awesome. And then lastly, I wanted to provide a panorama data point as well. I didn't include it from this year because we haven't really dove in as a staff yet into this year's data, but it is up a tick this year. I think we're at 89%, but in 2023-24, 88% of students reported that they have supportive relationships, and that was a figure that put us in the 90th percentile nationally. That's been a big point of focus, as you've heard from everybody else. It's been true at the high school as well, to really reconnect kids and to make sure that they have strong connections, either at home or at school, and to make sure that that partnership is working well with them. And so I'm really, really proud of 88%. I think it really speaks to the dedication of our staff to kind of re-engage with kids coming out of COVID over the last couple of years. In terms of successes and accomplishments, there were a number of things I wanted to share with the board that I think are, again, are points of pride for us at the high school. Attendance and truancy. So as you're aware, last year, we were dealing with the implementation of a new state law regarding establishing chronic absenteeism. And last year, our data point, so this is sort of the first year where we've got good data points before and after. Last year at the high school, this is as of at the end of the month of February, we had 19% chronic absenteeism and 3% truancy. This year, I'm really pleased to report that those numbers have decreased, which is a good thing. So we're living at 14% chronic absenteeism and less than 1% truancy. And to give a big shout out to the assistant principals, that's a huge credit to them. They work tirelessly to intervene early. They're on those numbers all the time. They're talking to families, talking to kids. And so it's no small thing for those figures to be down 5% in chronic absenteeism, which is again excused absences. So that can be a hard one sometimes. But even to have the truancy rate coming down too is outstanding. So we're super proud of that. We're also really proud of the graduation rate and the post-secondary placement for the class of 2024. The grad rate for last year's graduating class was 96%, which is 9% higher than the state average last year. And that's actually up a couple of percentage points for us over the last couple of years. So that's great. And then again, 90% of the class of 2024 went on to a 2 or 4 year college. So we were right in line with our averages, which is awesome. In terms of curricular accomplishments, we had a level services ask last year, but we did have a couple of curriculum asks so that we could meet those level services. So I did just want to call attention to, we re-upped on a subscriptions for our math curriculum. We use a couple of problem-based approach curriculums in our Algebra 1 and geometry classes. If you ever get the opportunity to go in, it's really exciting to see. There's a lot of math talk. There's a lot of small group discussion. There's problems get solved in a hands-on kind of way. Sometimes there's movement. It's a really dynamic mode of instruction. And so we were excited to continue it. We piloted this work, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, and we're really excited about the curriculum, the curriculum outcomes. And so last year we asked to continue with that. And again, the dynamic in those classrooms is really, really fun to see. And I think catching more kids than we otherwise would if the instruction was a bit more of a traditional model. We also re-upped on our with a subscription in our world language department last year. And I think we continue to see success there. One of our barometers for that is a couple years ago, we grabbed the bull by the horns for the Seal of Biliteracy, which is a state recognition, something that the state of Maine instituted a couple years ago. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, but it's sort of a trend across the country nationally to have these, they call them seals. Basically, the way it works is the state identifies assessments that students can take. And if they do well on those assessments, they receive a seal of biliteracy. We actually do it as an endorsement on the transcript. But what the seal certifies is that these students are proficient in multiple languages. Typically, seal of biliteracy, it's 2 languages, but every now and then we do see a case, especially where somebody might be coming in with a background in multiple languages. We do see a case where somebody gets a seal, earns a seal in multiple languages. It's a rare case, but it does happen every now and then. But last year we had 7 students in Spanish achieve the seal of biliteracy, which is really, really good. And super awesome to send them off into college and into the world with the ability to speak 2 languages.
It's also something we're providing for MLL.
Yes, yeah. So we're trying to figure out, we have students who are, what's interesting, right, is the dynamic is, you know, we have a lot of native English speakers who are learning Spanish or French or Latin. We're also trying to figure out ways to flip that so that we can honor the fact that we've got students coming in who are non-native English speakers, and that's where their work is. And so we're trying to work through that. Some kids come to us and their native language might be Spanish or Portuguese, but their writing skills or their reading skills in that language might not be as good as their oral or their listening skills in that language. So, but we are trying to close that gap so that we're honoring the fact that it's not just about you speak English first and then you learn another language. It's the fact that you're bilingual in any 2 languages that the state will recognize through the seal. We also last year, it was level services, but it kind of reflects the reinvigoration, as Kathy was alluding to, of the music program K-12. As all of you know, it took a major hit during COVID, but the energy around it right now is super exciting and contagious. So last year we were up a little bit in our music department ask from the board, or from the community, I should say, because what we've been seeing is that students are really growing, and we really want opportunities to showcase students, and that costs some money. We have to get them to some of these competitions and things like that. So just as a reference point, we had 46 band and chorus students, which at least in recent memory was a record number. I don't know if it's a record number, from 10, 15 years ago, but certainly in recent memory. We had 46 band and chorus students participate in the District 1 Honors Festival, which is awesome. And then we actually had 12 choral students were accepted to All-State, also an extraordinarily high number. We actually had 1 SHS choral student who was accepted to the ACDA, that's the American Choral Directors Association national competition. So Mr. Mosier will be going with that student to the national competition, which is great. And again, that's in large part due to us being able to support those opportunities, connect kids to those opportunities. Couple other successes and accomplishments. So dual enrollment programming. So just to give you some sense of that. So on average, we have about 38 students that are doing dual enrollment early college credits. We are down a little bit this year in that regard to 29 students. But again, these are super huge opportunities for kids to graduate as many as 12 credits in a year. And I think as many as 18 credits over their high school career. Another thing I wanted to call out, we continue to sort of work with our CTE partners. That is Westbrook Regional Vocational Center and Portland Arts and Technology High School, to serve kids who are interested in those programs. That's happening on a couple different fronts. So on the PATHS, on the CTE side, WRVC and PATHS, Those programs continue to work with industries to try to increase dual enroll and local community colleges, I should say, to increase dual enrollment opportunities, but also to increase industry certifications for those students who are graduating from those programs. So again, just as a data point, we've got 19 members of last year's graduating class who graduated from high school with a total of 55 industry certifications and 62 dual enrollment credits through CTE partnerships. Awesome work for those kids. And then effective this year, we also worked with CTE in response to a law that was passed last year around integrated credits. This is an old idea that's new again. It's had different iterations over the years, but the basic concept is that students go to these CTE schools, they might go to electricity, and then some of their electricity programming can count towards some form of core credit at the high school, perhaps science or English or something like that. It was really exciting to see this work unfold, and it unfolded quickly last year, I would say, so much so that we're actually a year ahead of the law. We had until this coming fall to implement what we felt like we were ready last year. CTE worked with some instructional coaches. I think they made really solid recommendations for what credits should count and how. We looked at that. We felt really good about what they put forward. We actually put forward a couple of local recommendations because we saw some places where a CTE program matches up really well with some of our programming over at the high school. And again, we want to honor the work that kids are doing. So as of now, we have 48 high school students that are on pace to earn 41 integrated credits, which is, again, really efficient for them, opening up opportunities for them. This is really a great way to catch kids who are interested in CTE, but are potentially a little bit behind because CTE is such a driver of a schedule. They go there every day for 2 blocks of an 8-block schedule overall. So because it's half of their schedule, we really have to make sure that they're in a good position in terms of graduation. This lets us maybe send a kid who we had to worry about who's just a little bit behind, that we otherwise might have had to find another path or cut off altogether because they needed a way to recoup credit, and CTE wouldn't allow for that. So that's super exciting stuff. The other thing that I wanted to report out on, we had a capital investment last year at the high school to convert a partial storage closet and then a single office space in the all-purpose room into 3 conference rooms. It's been a struggle the last couple of years as programmatic needs have changed and student needs have changed. We've really found that we've needed some smaller breakout type spaces for folks. Those areas have become really competitive between using them as meeting spaces, using them as testing spaces, using them for, to hold somebody for a disciplinary reason. And so this has really sort of given us some breathing room in terms of small group space. So we were super excited to get that project done. And it's been a real success. Those rooms are getting regularly used at the high school, which is awesome. And then one last data point I wanted to mention along the MTSS lines, like everybody else, we continue to do that work at the high school. As of now, we've got 122 students. So for us, that looks primarily like students that are scheduled into the study center and students that are accessing social work support. And we've got 122 students, gen ed students, that are accessing MTSS supports at the high school. And I think, are really benefiting that. There's only a handful of kids that are accessing both sides of that. So in general, it's kids that are getting some academic support or they're getting some social work support. But we're super excited to that. And I think it's been a really solid year on that front. Goals and priorities. So our MTSS goals for 25-26, as a high school, one of our, key part of our strategy to helping kids be successful is really to make sure that we have programming that reflects student interests and that provides opportunities to them that we think are worthwhile. So we continue to sort of look for ways, and some of that's driven by, the state letting us know what economic needs might be. Some of it is driven by, local needs. Some of it is driven by, high student interest areas that we just aren't meeting right now. But we continue to look for, to develop programming and educational opportunities and learning pathways for all students that are consistent with 21st century college and career expectations. In other words, we're preparing kids to go off into the world and be successful in the ways that they want to be successful. We also, this year, we've taken some steps towards examining our data culture at the high school. For us, I think the major hurdle was wrapping our heads around all of the data that we have. We certainly have the, we certainly have Maine through year. We certainly have iReady at the 9th grade level. We also have MEA Science. That's sort of the standardized testing that everybody does. We also have our AP level data, our advanced placement data that we get reports on. We have SAT, PSAT data that we get reports on. We have, classroom level grades and assessments. So wrapping your head around all of those data points and how they all line up and what they might all mean was a really significant investment of time. And I think we've come out of that kind of noticing some things and having some interesting questions. And so at this point, we're talking with staff about, what are some things that are valuable to you? Here's this ocean of data. What fish might be most useful for you to look at? Because again, if you look at the whole thing, it can be overwhelming and paralyzing at the same time. In terms of facilities, we continue to explore ways to adapt existing spaces to meet 21st century programmatic demands. One of our challenges right now at the high school is pretty much every space that we've got, as far as classroom or office space, with the exception of a couple of conference rooms, is full. So if we're looking to add things, that usually means we have to identify a space for it. It's not just as simple as, I want to do something. We can't just put somebody in a room. Teacher needs a room, a home base at least, if it's not a classroom. So we continue to explore ways, and that's sort of on the same timeline as, well, what might we be looking to do and what space could we tap to kind of support that? And then reaccreditation, it's a swear word at the high school, but I'll say it anyways. We are sometime in 2028, we will be up for reaccreditation. That's something that we do every 10 years. We haven't been told if it's going to be spring or fall of 2028, which I'm eagerly awaiting because it matters a great deal whether it happens in the spring or fall for us. But we have a number of tasks that we have to do to get ready for that. And it's actually something that's starting this year. So we have a training, I think, that takes place, next Tuesday, I'm told. Next Tuesday about sort of what the layout is. We work with NEASC, or the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which is sort of the big accreditation business, I guess I would say, or the big accreditation organization. They really are kind of the gold standard. They've revamped their process a little bit this year. It used to start 2 years out. Now it's starting 3 years out. And so we've been doing our homework, but we're eagerly anticipating meeting with them to learn more about it. But next year we'll be doing some work towards that. We'll have a meeting with them sometime after that work is completed, and then we'll be gearing up to host sometime in 2028. So it's a big process, but it's also a tremendous opportunity to take a look top to bottom as a whole school at what we're doing in relation to, really important standards of success in terms of school performance. And so in looking at the standards that they've given us to this point, I have high hopes that we'll score really well, and that we'll perform really well, but there'll always be areas of improvement. So I'm anticipating that as well.
Thank you, Nate. And with that, we will move to athletics and activities with Michael Beach.
I'll try to capture 2 slides in one here. So certainly, one of the things that we talk about in after-school activities is participation rates, because it's a good measure of, indicator of a strong program. And so over the past, since 2016, Maine's participation rate in athletics has dropped by 13.1%, while ours has continued to trend up. If you look at page 56 and 57 of your budget book, it charts out all of that data for you. But certainly our trend has continued, has been continued growth in after school activities, with a little blip during the COVID years. And that's held true for our after-school club programs as well. We obviously have quite a few multiple sport participants, which is why that number exceeds 100%. But those students still have to be dealt with as if they're new students each year, you know, so each season. So it doesn't, you know, doesn't matter to us. They're a different student if they participate in another season. Same with clubs as well. We have not as much carryover in club programs. Most of that, kids might do one or two things, but there's not as much carryover as there is in athletics. So we're proud of those numbers. I provided you all that information, so I won't take the time now to dive into it. We're also proud of our booster clubs. It's very, very difficult to manage over 20 different booster clubs and over 500 different volunteers in those booster clubs. That raise a substantial amount of money to offset our, you know, any shortfalls in our budget. But we're in a really good position right now with our booster handbook and managing those people and the work that they do. And I think we have a good thing going there. I think right now it's the best way to manage booster groups is to have individual groups, because they're the ones that's how they can raise the most money to support our programs. And at the end of the day, that's the primary function of the booster group is fundraising. We have approximately 120 coaches and club advisors at the high school, another 45 at the middle school. So it's a large group of people that all have to be treated just like any other employee has to be treated. So it's a lot of people. Interestingly enough, Jordan gave me some information about our coaches, our athletic coaches having over 1,200 years of experience between all of them, which is another indicator of a successful program is to have a high retention rate within your staff. Our athletic trainers continue to work hard. And last year they had over 6,000 student contacts. Good or bad, I guess, depending on how you look at it. We're actually over that already this year. We're already at over 7,000 contacts. Now, the good part of that is that students are coming to the athletic trainers expressing some concern about something or wanting to do some rehabilitation or something along that line. It's not always an injury. The other side of that is student preparedness for a particular season. And so that's one of our goals and why we transitioned people with our strength and conditioning coach. And we took that position and looked to somebody that had those very specific skills and that very specific training. And we really transformed that whole area in terms of helping with student preparedness for seasons. I think you can skip the next slide.
Somehow you got all these cool transitions.
I didn't do that.
I know. No, nobody did that.
So this slide here continues our discussion about the success and accomplishments. I think the addition of our club activities liaison has been a huge success. Like Ms. Crosby said about the Wentworth kids needing that support after school. We also find at high school and middle school that they need that level of support as well sometimes to make sure that they're in the place they're supposed to be in and doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. And so I think that the addition of that person this year has really helped us improve efficiency. As you saw, it's a large staff with a small administrative team to support that. And so this person has really been invaluable for that. And I think also, the maintaining our goal of continued push to have the budget support those essential components of the program has kind of been a success point at this stage. We have some gaps to fill, certainly in terms of staffing and supporting that, but we've made some great strides in the last 15 or so years in terms of getting to the point where, you know, we can honestly say that we can at least do the basic things. We don't do all the extra things, but we can at least do the basic things to run our current programs. The addition of our Perry-Weather system, we continue to try to improve those efficiencies as well, and that's really related to a safety issue. Perry-Weather system is a great tool. We actually put in our policies related to weather items, and it actually sends coaches, for example, text message and say, okay, you've got to not practice today because the temperature is this, or you know, whatever the case may be. It's a very sophisticated program that we use. You've probably seen the hardware out on the turf field up on one of the light posts, but it's a great program. In terms of our goals and priorities, we want to continue to figure out ways to keep our programs fresh and have students continue to be involved in those. And we think, you know, communication and outreach, one of the things that we're considering right now is a sort of step-up day for 8th grade parents to talk with them about, you know, what it's like to participate in after-school activities at the high school level. And have a panel of coaches and advisors and what the expectations are. And so we feel that that would help improve our communication and student readiness for participation at the high school level. We continue to look at ways to leverage technology to improve our efficiencies in our department. And in terms of each athletic coach, for example, is required now to have about 8 certifications to be able to coach. And so to track all those and where everybody's at, you know, what time of year they have to do their certifications is a job for sure. And so we look at opportunities in terms of technology to improve that. Also, there are changes in technology, as you know. So for example, a company called Arbiter just bought out Family ID and bought out Our School. Our School is a schedule program that we also use for facility scheduling for our district. Another company has bought them out. There's going to be significant changes. So we're researching right now programs that we might be able to transition to help with that. We're testing a couple right now. Unfortunately, they have some bugs, the one that we're testing right now. So we're testing some others and hopefully be ready for the fall season with that, not only on the facility schedule side of things, but also on the athletic scheduling side of things. The nice thing is people have really come to rely on that communication tool. And so we want to keep it going with the least amount of anxiety as possible. And so like I mentioned before, we continue to have a goal of strengthening our financial situation and continuing to find ways to you know, bring in those things that boosters of funding that we feel we should be funding. So that's the very quick version, because I know we're on a timeline.
Questions from the board?
So can I just say, I think in the interest of time, we've got a little segment that's about the talking points and takeaways, and I'm going to give that for homework. If there are things that you want to add into that document, it's linked into the agenda for today. It's open to everybody as an editor. So if there are points that came up during these conversations that you want to continue to reflect on or get more information about, you can use that document, and we'll get to a finance committee meeting right away next week. So we'll keep that momentum moving forward. I did take a few notes in there from
Yeah.
some of the things that we said already. So Q&A for our crowd. Questions?
Actually, I have one thing I forgot to add. I can just chime in. with
Oh,
one last
yeah.
Start with an A.
Yes.
So when I was talking about the staffing needs, I realized that I wanted to share with you this morning just the changing nature of what we do and how that can impact what our needs are. And within the last 3 weeks, we've had 4 students transfer into the district. One has started, the other 3 will be starting by the end of the first week in May. And of those 4 students, 3 are going to require one-to-one ed tech support, and 1 is currently in and out of district placement at their current school. So these are the kinds of things that can happen at any time for us. And our obligation, of course, is when kids come in with an IEP, we have to implement that IEP. So just a heads up that that's something that we're working through right now. Again, that's we could have 2 kids move out next week and go in the other direction too. That hasn't been happening. Yeah, pretty significant impact for us.
So is that
I think
added?
I'll add that to my comment, which is about the items in motion.
Yeah, because that
That
would be
is
an
not
add to the budget.
reflected in Chris's current
Yeah.
first reading budget. And so in the past, in recent years, we've been lucky enough between first and second reading to have numbers work in our favor, right? Like
Right.
something comes down, something goes up. We'll know what our anthem rates are in a few weeks, right? So if those come down a little bit, then we have the capacity to kind of hold the line on where we are, but also add back, we may need 2 or 3 more ed tech positions, right? So Chris and I talked about this, and strategically, it didn't really make sense to change the first reading budget. But it's a really good example of what happens between first and second reading as we get better information.
Yeah, because that's not only the ed techs, it's the added district placement too, right?
That's
So
correct.
both would be in items in motion?
Yes.
And again, remember, these are required ads because
Yes.
they're part of special education, so we can't self-select not to fund those.
Right.
And we
And
should know for sure by the end of that first week in April, if the families are in fact going to be here, that's when we'll know. if they're going to. So I'm not hearing anything to suggest that they won't, but just know
Yeah.
a couple of them haven't officially arrived, and 1 has started.
and actually, I mean, this is a great time for them to come because we're in the middle of the budget process.
Yeah,
There'll be plenty of times when we've passed a budget and a kid will show up in October.
right.
And there's not really anything you can do budgetarily except to flex, within what you've already been appropriating. So, but my feeling about my favorite quote items in motion, that's gonna be exciting this year. That's gonna be items on a roller
Yes.
coaster,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yes. I love that for you. That's a choice word, yes.
That's a good one. All right, so I
All right.
derailed that. Back to questions for folks here.
No? Okay. All right, so, it'll be me. I'm gonna go to you first, Kathy. So that same chart that we just mentioned, I mentioned earlier to, K2. I need to flip back up to it because I cannot to look at the play space. When you look at the number for you, if I can find that for you, when I mean you, I mean the middle school. It is roughly 300, as I'm looking, I'll just tell you, I know the number is roughly 300 additional students to you. And that would be and these again are based on, live births that have already happened in Scarborough, and it's looking out up to 10 years. And so for the middle school, the enrollment, is looking to go to 923 and 3435. If you add the contingency, that would be 951 students. And so what we also heard on Monday is you already adding an added lunch to next year, so you'll be at 6 lunches. The portables for the 6th grade are likely at capacity already, if I remember correctly. So what do you anticipate doing with 300 extra bodies?
Well, let's see, everyone, a lot of people would lose classrooms and be on carts, world language, allied arts. And then if you could find a classroom who actually, where a teacher had a prep for them to go into, you might be able to do that. But you'd have some space as, you know, I mean, you'd have to bring back all the lunch lounge along with the 6 lunches, and then that would be less room in the cafeteria to probably have an additional group of students. So, I mean, I don't even know through creative measures if you.
Don't
know,
sugarcoat that, they
I
certainly
know.
work. You're saying you don't have a solution.
There is.
Thank you.
Hence our current work.
Into the hallway.
Yeah, and I want to say that like, these are good things let me tell you where they are in the building process. Next week is when they're anticipating to go down to 2 solutions. And so, the reason I'm asking you these questions is because as they move on, one of the big drivers is dollars, of course, because the building projects are expensive. But it's how do you prioritize the work and how do you make a most fiscally responsible decision? And so the middle school is on the table, Wentworth is on the table, the K2 schools are on the table, and they're trying to reconcile all of these moving pieces. And so my intention after this is to just bring the building committee along with this discussion, right? So that they kind of know these facts going in, because I think it's one thing to read a number and to say, okay, we're going to have 300 more students here and 300 more here, and I haven't even gotten to you yet. But it's one thing to read it, but it's another to say those are actually tiny humans and what are we doing with them, right? That's a different story. Okay, is chorus during the day?
Yes.
Okay, so when you have 6 lunches, what happens to chorus that's using the lunchroom?
So they will have chorus first or second period before, you know, the lunches start. So those are open for the cafeteria. And then I will have to try to see with a preparation if a music or band teacher, and if not, I'm gonna have to move into a classroom space and look for a classroom space that has the least amount of noise distraction.
So does that mean a class will have to go on cart next year? Potentially?
The chorus teacher?
Not the chorus, well, the chorus teacher needs a classroom. Are you displacing a teacher from the classroom?
When-
Go there for that period.
Yeah, just for that
Just for
one
the
period.
period.
So it
Okay.
wouldn't be the chorus teacher's classroom.
Got it,
And
okay.
we have done this many times throughout the years with different numbers. We have had all 4 of our world language teachers on carts when our enrollment is higher.
Right.
So right now, they are able to have a classroom because of the renovation of 2 of the science labs and that our numbers are lower. When the numbers grow, someone in that position, health teacher, world language, goes onto a cart and they use the classroom of a teacher who's on a preparation. The teacher on a preparation moves into another space to do their work, like in the learning commons or, you know, an area.
And do we have, I feel like something's in the back of my brain, but do we have numbers when we move teachers to carts? And yes, I follow you why we do it.
Yeah.
But when we do that, what is the loss in instructional time?
Can be up to 10 minutes when the classroom that you're using is over in the 6th grade, you know, portable. So right now, 6th grade health is on a cart. And so it's, they travel from the gym, one side of the building, over to the 6th grade portables to use one of the classrooms.
So that's the teacher's time.
That's the,
We're not amending the amount of time for the class to happen, right? I think the point around teachers being on cart that's the most problematic is, I think back to a great statement that one of our teachers, Robin Viola, made to the board, I believe it was last year or the year before, when she made the comparison between a cook in a kitchen. And when you're baking something in your kitchen, you're going into all the cupboards and you're getting all of your ingredients and you're doing all the things. But if you had to then say, make those blueberry muffins at another location, a teacher has to make sure that they have everything they possibly need with them in a bag that they can carry, right? And so they don't have all of the ready resources. They don't have, things up on the wall that they can point to or what have you, because it's not their home-based classroom.
Right, and so it's not, so if I hear you correctly, it's not necessarily lost instructional time to the children, but it's lost,
Effectiveness.
yeah, maybe that's a better word.
Efficiency.
Efficiencies.
Right.
I
That
can't
was
tell you how
teaching
many times I
effectiveness.
noticed teachers in observations flexing to meet student
Right.
needs in the moment and grabbing materials. Oh, I noticed
Let's
this
look at
need with
this.
these students. And there will be a loss for students in that lack of flexibility.
Right.
Right.
They don't have every resource with them that they might have in a
Not to-
fixed space.
And not to mention the fact that what she's talking about are some specialty programs, like
Right.
chorus requires, I'm just trying to envision a chorus moving into a classroom and having a quality program.
Well, I'm trying
right?
to imagine that in the cafeteria, but that's.
It's not well.
Right, having any,
Yeah,
it's just not the same
Right.
opportunity for students.
okay, I think I can put this together. Okay, then one last, just thought, is there any thought about adding on to the movement breaks, and have you noticed any change in behavioral moments, I'll say?
So do you mean to make them longer?
Yeah, like, is there a possibility of doing that, to add on, or maybe adding a second one?
Well, so right now they're getting up to the 6th and 7th grade, well, 8th grade also. They're getting up to 20 minutes of movement break. I think it would be really hard in our schedule to increase that. So they tend to eat very quickly. And usually they have some extra time at their end of their lunch, so it's an option. You can stay in and continue to sit here, especially when it's cold. Some kids decide they're just stay in for a while, or you can go outside. So then they have an additional 10 minutes. So after about 15 minutes, they're able to go out. And of course, we gauge that on the weather and the temperature. If it's there's a time frame of a temperature that we take 5 minutes off of the movement break and we only let them go out for 10 minutes when it's between 15 and 20 degrees.
And have you noticed any decrease in behavioral concerns?
I think it's more focusing. I mean, we certainly do still have conversations with students during movement break. The expectations and no hands on.
Right, there might be new behaviors.
They are very creative. You'll see. So, but it's just that getting their energy. It's easier to come back and sit. We are employing some of our mindfulness when you come back. You're pretty hyped up, even lunch. Kiddos, they've been chatting and things, and just take some deep breaths and some exercises to get them refocused.
Well, that's a good, I would consider that a win for behavior.
Yeah.
All right, I just have two more. One is a comment, Mike. The 7,000 trainer student contacts, and what you mentioned was really resonated with me. The purpose of the strength and conditioning coach to help with student prep. Because I think what sometimes we forget is these injuries can be lifelong, right? And so I really appreciate the addition of that, because what you're doing is helping them. I think we all think about adults, we all say stretching is not necessary, right? And so teaching them the proper and appropriate ways to work with their body and to prep for a season so they're not coming in cold is huge. And I wonder if you're gonna see those numbers come down. Yes, I agree with you. It's good that they are going to the trainer, but I do wonder if what you'll see from that hire is a
If
decrease.
they're more proactive.
Yes, like a preventative care almost. So that's really, I'm excited to see that. And then my last comment is thank you to all of you. What I think is really awesome about this is we get to hear what awesome things you guys are doing. And I know we ask a lot of questions and we wonder about things, but the numbers and the data and the achievements are really, really impressive. So thank you. Oh, and do you want to tell them about this? Oh. Oh, you're passing it. I apologize. We're having a senior citizens dinner, appreciation dinner. That's what, if you're curious to, or have someone who wants to
Yeah,
attend.
somebody wants to.
It is
But-
very
And
popular.
I think they're all aware of it because we've been asked to have groups, right?
Yeah,
Student
participate.
groups participate, so
And
I
some
don't,
of us are
this shouldn't be new to anyone on the radar.
I just put up the last slide on here. Shannon, we're reminding you, we have to adjourn.
Yeah, oh, thank you.
Um,
Yes, I already forgot.
But the last slide in the slide deck for folks who are going to be watching or viewing this later is a current list of all of our upcoming meetings in the budget process. I'll put in a pitch for the budget website, which will be updated. I've got the framework of it already built. I'm going to be linking in a bunch of documents today. We'll have more conversations at the board meeting on Thursday night, which is our first reading. You'll get to hear some of these things again. But I would say with a caveat that some of these times might change. And so folks shouldn't just rely on this as their calendar forever because the calendar does get updated. For example, I think our finance committee meeting was originally 6, but we've moving them to 5 so people can go to the SBAC meeting. So we've been flexing a little bit. So I would ask people in the community, if they're looking to see one of these meetings, that they double check the time before they tune in.
Right. That's good. All right, if there are with no objections, we will adjourn at 11:12. Thank you so much.
Thank you.